Welcome back, everyone. I'm Michelle Mondragon, your expert massage therapist and entrepreneur, and today's host for Between Heaven and Earth Healing Arts podcast. Today, I have with me a special guest who's going to help us explore the expansive, growing realm of informed trauma yoga. And her name is Tanya. Tanya, welcome to the show. So Tanya is Afro-Latina, Caribbean roots. She's born in Florida. She lives in Puerto Rico, currently based out of Puerto Rico. And I know she visits Arizona oftentimes because at one point her and I were neighbors. So Tanya, I'm gonna do a little introduction for you and you can let me know if I've missed anything, just chime in.
Sure.
Thank you. Tanya is certified in trauma-informed yoga and Pilates. She's an instructor. She also does one-on-one and group sessions. She has a background in psychology and communications. She's also a professional life coach, wellness facilitator. She has a podcast that she's been doing since 2017, which is No More Trauma. She's also a self-publisher of the Happy Deck, which is a tool to help facilitate healing practices. Tanya, I mean, you're already like just so accomplished and have so much to offer. I'm so excited to dive into our topic today with you. Can you share a little bit about your journey into becoming a trauma response yoga teacher and what's inspired you?
Yes. Thank you so much for, first off, for having me. So I stepped on the mat in 2009. And I would say in 2009, I really didn't have any intention. The intention was more so to get fit and to try something new. And I remember a friend, she was my roommate at the time. She was like, "You want to try yoga?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? Let's work out from home, you know." And she puts in this DVD and we're ready. We got our mats rolled out and we're like, yeah, let's do this. And I would say about 10, 15 minutes into it, you know, we're in downward facing dog and we're just like, she was like, "Dude, I'm sweating." And I was like, "Yeah, me too." And she was like, "I don't think this is for me." And I was like, "Yeah, me neither." But what's funny is there was a little twinkle of just a glimmer that I wanted to try it again. And so in 2012, the same thing happened. A friend asked me after lunch of a good plate of shrimp tacos and it's like, "Let's go do some hot yoga." Sure, why not? And I remember walking in this building, the studio, and I see the candles, I see the wood flooring and the lavender essential oil filling up the studio space. And I said, okay, oh, this is going to be interesting. This isn't nothing like that DVD.
Nice.
So immediately when I forward fold, not only am I hot, and for anyone who hasn't walked into a hot yoga studio, the temperature can get pretty warm. It can get, all the way up to about 109, sometimes even 120 degrees.
What? I didn't realize they went as high as 120.
Wow. And it was hot.
Steamy.
It was absolutely hot. And as I'm forward folding, I can feel the shrimp taco sitting in my throat. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Something about this is all wrong. But I went back.
You didn't give up. You went back.
And I went back because something happened. Happened. It was almost as if I knew I belonged. So when some people ask me, how did you come to this place called yoga? Truly and honestly, I believe when I was 6 years old, I knew that is what I was put here for. Before my grandfather passed away, I was kind of teaching him yoga. the night before he passed. Yeah, it was very interesting, like a chair yoga.
Interesting.
And I always think about that, you know, and the last time before my grandmother transitioned, we did a meditation together.
Wow.
And it's just so interesting. Like it's literally my second language. So fast forwarding 2020 during the pandemic is when I decided to get certified. So from there, I've taught in studio, I've taught, you know, in homes and rehabilitation centers, on the beach. My goodness. Yeah, in schools, online. Yeah, so it's been a really good run of yoga. So, yeah.
Wow. So really, from a really young age, you were like born to be a facilitator, to hold space for others, and wow, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that part of your story.
Of
So
course.
young, and
Yeah,
but you stayed devoted and came back to it, and you mentioned certification, and if someone is looking to get certified in something like this, what does that look like? What kind of certifications do you have to take to like prepare for that kind of role? I mean, you started young, already having like an awareness of facilitating for others. But in terms of like academically or through a school, or what does that look like?
So what does it take to be trained as a certified yoga instructor? So there are no requirements. I've seen individuals that are still in high school getting certified, all the way to, you know, physicians and psychotherapists and accountants, you know, wanting to have this deeper learning of yoga. And it doesn't require anything. I think what it requires is patience, you know, patience for self. I believe it requires, you know, that's the main thing. The patience and the willingness to want to just show up for yourself and to have a shift in your life. You know, because a lot of people come to it just because they've experienced a disruption in their life. You know, everyone comes to yoga for different reasons, right? So
different catalysts.
There's some sort of pivotal moment. And then there's, you know, maybe that one person that sees, you know, saw someone online doing a split and they're just saying, I want to get flexible, I want to do that, and post it, you know. So a lot of people show up to the training for different reasons. Some people just want to, you know, just have a deeper awareness and understanding.
Interesting. Okay. So just about anyone can do it if they're called.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for those who might not be familiar with how trauma-informed yoga differs from traditional practices, can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
Absolutely. So first and foremost is, what is yoga, right? What is that? And yoga means to yoke, and that's bringing the mind and the body in unison. You know, and what you know, some people still don't understand what that means. And it's like, you ever go out the door, you put on your socks and your shoes, you grab your handbag, you grab your Stanley cup, that's the thing that everyone's using now. And you run out the door and you're at the car and you're saying, wait a minute, where are the keys? I left them in the door, trying to lock the door, and I ran off, you know, and now I'm at the car and I can't get in, you know. And so, you know, it's that ability to be present with self, right? Ahimsa, one of my favorites of the Yoga Sutras, is, you know, nonviolence. Can I do that within self? right? Can I not steal my own time in someone else's? And so we take that just a little bit further and we say, so what is trauma informed? Well, trauma informed or trauma sensitive yoga, I believe was coined by David Emerson, registered yoga teacher. I want to say, don't quote me on the year, I want to say in 2002.
Okay.
But it was to introduce yoga in a therapeutic way that speaks to trauma survivors, right? So can I see you through the lens of someone who may have experienced, 9/11? Can I see you through the lens when you walk in the studio that you're showing up to the mat because you just relapsed and you're trying to get your life back? Can I see you through the lens of a mother who's been trying to get pregnant for over a decade?
Wow.
And just had a miscarriage? Can I create a space that is safe? Can I boundaries? Right?
Yeah, that's powerful.
Like? Boundaries. Can I ask for consent? If I see you in a posture and maybe I want to just show you a little shift in the way the arm is extended over the ears, and that the pelvis is parallel to the earth, if I'm cueing that or sharing that, guiding that pose, can I show you in a way that's not harmful?
I see. So it's specific kind of approach and communication style and exercising more conscious boundaries and communicating those boundaries. And what else am I missing?
Yeah, it's providing a practice that's accessible and safe, which allows the student full autonomy.
I see.
Because if I see someone who walks in the studio that may be wheelchair bound, can I offer inclusive yoga, right? No one's left out, we all belong. But I'm more conscious of that, right? You may go into core power yoga and you say, you got this, one more. And sometimes that can be alarming and jarring to the person who's experienced verbal abuse from their boss. And so now I come to the studio to practice, but I want to feel safe on the mat.
Yeah, that's really important. That's really powerful. And I never really considered it myself. I hadn't heard of trauma-informed yoga until we met. And I had known, when I first heard about it, I thought about it like, is it like yin? Where you put me in a position and I just laid, and I remember when we met, it was in, I think it was 2021, 2022, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like just on the outside of like the most, like the climactic part of COVID and lockdowns and stuff like that, just on the other side of that. And I myself had kind of, like everyone during that time period was going through, was processing and navigating this experience. And I was going through a breakup and so many personal things. And I saw actually your flyer on the laundry room door.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I've never, and that was honestly the first time I had heard about it. I didn't have any awareness of it before that. And I know we connected, and you actually gave me a really beautiful experience and brought awareness into areas that I hadn't really, I mean, I would call it tension or resistance. You know, those are
Hmm.
words that I might use, but
Yeah.
um, you created such a gentle and safe space. And I could feel, it was like one of the first times, honestly, that I had, and maybe it's because of the rawness of the time, you know, time and place and circumstances has a lot to do with these emotional awareness and releases. And I definitely became really aware of some areas in my body that were, I felt the emotion that and
Yeah.
it rose to the surface. And just having awareness around that and like asking myself, well, what else can I do to facilitate this? And um, so working with you really just brought a new layer of awareness.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's one. Is there another way that you can explain how yoga can help individuals who are dealing with trauma specifically? I mean, that's just a little something that I experienced with our first encounters and my first experience with informed
Mhm.
trauma yoga with informed trauma. Sorry, I'm totally butchering informed trauma yoga.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, is there like what does a typical session look like? Um, yeah, how does it help individuals deal with trauma?
Sure. It's a good question, because we hear it, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of assumptions of what it is and what it's not.
Yeah.
And I think first and foremost is belonging. I kind of always go back to that piece, because, for example, when we take a look at, you know, why we shop in one place versus the other, we feel a sense of belonging. There's some
Mm-hmm.
things in this store that may offer a level of calm, a level of resonance. They have the things that you need, that, speak to you. Um, and so to me, belonging, you know, as all humans, we want to belong.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the very first thing. I think my approach is, welcome, welcome in, leaning in,
Mm-hmm.
glad to have you here. I think, all of those things matter. I think we've all been to places where we're waiting in line and we say, well, they didn't notice me.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't see me. There's a reason why we join certain gyms
Yeah.
or certain studios. That is the very first piece. If we kind of break that down a bit, is why do you go to that gym or why do you go to that salon? They see me and understand my needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the very first thing. Very small, but I think that part can go easily missed. And then I like to ask, what do you know about yoga?
Mm-hmm.
What brings you here? And maybe someone will say, sometimes individuals can be a little shy. And they say, well, I don't know anything. I thought it looked a certain way, or I thought it looked cool, or, you know, I'm I'm working with this heart condition, and um, my physician recommended it. My, cardio doctor said that, maybe this will help. And so I think once that gives me enough information, once I know, and I'll backtrack just a little, it's going to look different from studio working with someone, a full class,
Mm-hmm.
versus working with um, an individual,
Yeah.
right? So if
Yeah.
I'm working with the class, um, you know, I again educate as to what yoga is, the style that we're doing. I teach yin primarily, yin and hatha, but primarily I educate on what's happening inside the body and what the benefit is of each pose, you know, because some people are analytical and they're like, so why am I doing this thing? Can you tell me why am I doing this thing? Because I feel a little silly right now.
Yeah.
I got a toe over here and another toe over here, and then he's saying twist my pelvis and arms up here. So what is this doing? You sure I'm supposed to do this? And so, you know, even that, you know, bringing the humor into it, because sometimes I think, you know, when we experience trauma, we forget to laugh again.
Whew, yeah, I feel that.
We forget that the world is friendly, right?
Yes.
We forget that it's safe to laugh. That's another form of yoga, is laughter yoga, you know, but it starts to break down these walls. Maybe I was guarded before I stepped into the studio.
Yes.
And so we lean in, we educate, you know, as to what it is. And then I like to say that, again, this is an invitation. Each pose is an invitation. If your body is saying, Tanya, not today, not today. You get to choose. So putting that power back into the student's hand, right?
Yeah, I love
I'm
that.
just a container. I'm just a container and I guide you. And if we're doing, you know, seated forward fold and you're saying, Tanya, not today, my hands don't want to reach for my toes, no thank you. Perfectly fine. See if you can reach for the ankles. See if that feels comfortable. If that doesn't feel comfortable, how about let's bend at the knees, right? Inhale, lift from the spine. Exhale, see if you can gently fold. Go where the body will allow you, because you're the expert. My job is just to breathe with you.
I love that. I love that. I tell my clients the same thing. Like, I work with whatever shows up on the table, wherever you're at, and you know they'll ask me questions like, "Does it feel tense like that? Or does it feel tense there?" And I'm like, "Well, you tell me. What are you experiencing?
Yeah.
I don't live in your body.
Yeah.
I feel from out here a certain something, but why don't you, you know, yeah, I love that you redirect it and you give that back to folks on the mat. Yeah, that's really powerful and empowering. And I'm also one of those analytical ones. I get more into it when I hear what it's doing. Like, yes, squeezing those intestines.
Yes.
Everything that I just totally gorged on the other day, I'm consciously like detoxing it out.
Yes.
We all want to know
we all want something that feels good for us, right?
Yeah.
You know, because think about it, if we're in a grocery store and we're saying, oh, these blueberries are full of antioxidants, the antioxidants is going to make my skin glow. I want some of those blueberries. You hear me?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's medicine. It helps us tap into our own medicine, and I get so relaxed even just listening to you talk about the poses in this interview. It's like your voice is so supportive. It's so nurturing, and I've said it to you many times in other occasions, but it's like a superpower. It's one of your superpowers.
Well,
how you communicate. So you mentioned a couple of things when it came to what kind of awareness that you're trained to have with the different kinds of traumas that folks might carry through the door when they come to the mat. And it's interesting to me, you know, I have a similar experience with you. With popping in a DVD back in like 2000 something, I don't even know, right?
Yeah.
And like Rodney Yee was his name. And he was my first exposure to yoga. And but like how it's interesting to me how we've come from there to something so specialized, and as being trauma informed. And you said sometime in 2002, correct, that this gentleman decided to kind of structure it this way and add the element?
Yes, yes. That's in a guesstimate, David
Sure.
Emerson.
David
But
Emerson.
yeah, I want to say 2002.
So I wonder, like, what happened? Or usually we see iterations of things kind of emerge from social cultural need or awareness, like a
Mm-hmm.
part of our collective consciousness becomes
Mm-hmm.
more online in this new nodal area. It's like now pulsing some kind of information download. So, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tell me from your view
Mm-hmm.
and your experience, and having also, popped in the DVD and now sharing with your clients informed trauma, um, informed yoga, informed, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
Trauma
I
informed or
don't know
trauma
why
sensitive? Yeah.
trauma, since I think I like that better. It just rolls
Mm-hmm.
off the tongue better. So I'm
Yeah.
going to use
Yeah.
that one if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yes. Of course. Of course.
um, Tell me how you think that evolved. For me, that's like the genesis of that, and
Mm-hmm.
how our society has shifted to want this is
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and again, like I stated, I got certified in just 2020. We flipped those numbers around 2002,
Mm-hmm.
and we think trauma sensitive. And what I find interesting, and this can be me just deep in thought, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, how
riff, girl,
interesting.
riff.
2020, we flipped those numbers around. And my witnessing,
Mm,
uh, I want to say that many individuals, I think, were looking for it
mm-hmm.
in the middle of the pandemic, right? Like there was, to me, I feel as though, although my practice strengthened in 2012, I want to say in 2020, the evolution of what I saw, was, oh, we can offer this thing online.
Mm,
Excuse me. And we can offer not only online, we can give people the space to breathe and what that looks like, educate them on
mm-hmm.
pranayama. Um, I think the collective, we saw this suffering, right? We
Mm-hmm.
saw this power moment in the world where things were crumbling. We saw injustice. We
Mm-hmm.
saw, a loss of financial structure.
Mm-hmm.
We
Big time.
saw gaslighting of the CDC, with the information that we provided. It's like
Mm-hmm.
mask, no mask, mask under the nose, mask on the eyelids, mask on the face. What do we do? Wear a helmet? I'm confused.
Right.
And all of those things can be traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
We
Most
see
definitely.
individuals losing their lives in their homes to a loved one
Mm-hmm.
because they can't take it. What is happening? We're locked indoors.
Mm-hmm.
We saw an increase of, substance abuse,
Yeah. Isolation.
isolation,
Mm-hmm.
war. Um, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ways that we interact in the world were cut off, and how we interact with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure for myself, it was an opportunity. I couldn't touch anyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't work on bodies for
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like after when you've done it for 22, well, like 20 to 22 years at that time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you identify, like, people,
Yeah.
I think, had an opportunity to kind of question how they identify themselves in the world, or how they identify their needs, or yeah, I think you make a great point. 2020 was definitely an opportunity to awaken to ourselves and sit with ourselves and maybe come to terms with some of the things that we don't normally make time for or space for, or even like, you know, we live such compartmentalized lives, you know, and I have to put this one thing away in order to function out here. And then that one thing's gone. So now you have to like look at that one thing, you know, dang. So I really do. We have spoken a couple times before this, but I really believe that what you offer right now and your experiences leading up to this is really super powerful and needed at this time. And I think it's going to grow. And we can talk more about that, the future of it later, but whew,
yeah,
that was powerful.
yeah.
So
it's a powerful healing modality, you know.
Yes. So it kind of was born after 9/11, basically, in that little window afterwards, and was fortuitous in its inception, and has built a little bit of structure so that we can more adequately utilize it at this time. And we have now like the social cultural awareness, the opportunity that's been provided since then, since 9/11 up to this point, in order to really have awareness. We have the vernacular, the words, you know? Or, you know, for the most part, I mean, I think we all have room to grow. And this is what this podcast is aimed at doing, is, you know, speaking to people who maybe have never heard about, you know, yoga before, or how trauma response yoga, and so, or trauma sensitive. There I go again. I'm making up my own, my own branch, my own labels.
We know what you mean.
So yeah, it's really fascinating to me, and I'm really happy that you're here, and that I'm really pleased for your journey and how accomplished you are in it so far. And I'm excited to see what else you do. And so to that point, you have a beautiful website, and I just want to make sure that people know how to find you. And I'll make sure that at the end we get all of that out on the table.
Sure. Yeah.
But your website's great, and I know that you do work one-on-one with people. How do you like accommodate for like when you're do you like one-on-one more than you like groups, or is there something that you really enjoy more? Because I see on Instagram, I love your Instagram page. I see you on the beach. I see the setup and the way you make the space and set things up. And the water is medicine. And the ocean air is medicine. I mean, I would be there every day if I lived in Puerto Rico. But is there some particular way that you provide that really is rewarding for you, that you enjoy the most out of all of the ways that you facilitate?
So that's a great question. They're one that I lean to the most, and you know, I think what I enjoy the most is, regardless if it's in studio, if it's virtually, or if it's in person or one individual, I think what I enjoy the most is that journey. And what I mean by that, there's a quote, I believe, I want to say Eckhart Tolle, I want to say Gary Sukov, but they say the longest journey is from the brain to the heart.
Mm.
that is the longest journey. And when I get to witness someone walk that journey in the flow of yoga, that is the reward. Because when we show up to the mat, it's going to be different every time. There's a challenge every time. And that challenge is the reward. Is, you know, can I accept right here, right now? Can I accept this? Maybe I'm showing up with a suffering. Maybe I'm showing up with an openness. Maybe I'm showing up just to observe what's showing up within me. And to see someone inhale, exhale, but something else happens there, and you can see it in the energetic body. You can see that shift happen, and that is always the reward for me, because again, I'm just the guide.
Yeah.
And so I get to witness something beautiful unfolding, and that's you going in deeper without attachment to any of the kleshas, you know, those sufferings, those perceived thoughts that I am unworthy, I am nothing, or that I can't just get it right. I can exhale out without any attachment. That is the gift.
That's powerful. I mean, you said so many juicy things right there. A few things I want to touch on a little further, but yeah, that's really powerful. That's super rewarding. I can see that. One of the things you mentioned was how you see it unfold in the energetic body. One of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how do you measure progress? How are you able to see progress using the tools that you provide, using how you facilitate this in particular for folks? How are you able to measure, and what would it look like if you tried?
That's a really good question. I like that question. I think, you know, again, I just started in 2020, right? As a certified instructor. And so again, when I walk off the mat, I'm still a student. So I look to, you know, the greats, you know, or all the master yoga teachers before me. So I listen to different audio podcasts or go through different trainings, because again, I'm still the student. Some individuals have been teaching since the 90s or 80s.
Sure.
So I'm still, but through my lens and how I particularly measure someone's progress is in the breath.
Okay.
And kind of going back to that same sentence that I said before, is like, is there attachment? You know, it's all in almost like the yoga bliss. When you leave class or a session and you show up again, you breathe differently. That breath is working in different places. Maybe it was just stuck, maybe in the back, right? Maybe you were breathing and you can feel it in the backside body, right? So above the lumbar, so maybe right in between the shoulder blades, probably a little bit further down, you know, and maybe that's where you could only get some level of breath. But maybe by the fourth session, you go, wow, I can now feel the breath in my psoas. I can probably feel it in my pelvic floor, right? So now when I inhale, I can feel the muscles descending. You know, so it's all those different things. Is, you know, is there attachment? Is there resistance? Are you still resisting your body, right? So that's how I measure progress.
Wow, that's really beautiful. So without giving up like too not revealing a whole lot of details about any one particular person specifically, do you want to share a little example of how you've kind of walked through with someone, how the trauma-informed yoga has positively impacted one of your students? I know you have many, first of all, so I'm going to call you out. I'm being so humble. You have a plethora of reviews on both Airbnb and on your website. I know you've touched some lives. So I know you got plenty to share. Just one, whatever you're comfortable with sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'll choose a student near and dear to me, which is a relative, because, you know, never having the space or the time to get on the mat and so I'll just say it. So my dad, so I had never practiced yoga with him, never, ever, and not until the loss of my mother. So my mother transitioned December of 2023, unexpectedly, and it was jarring, to say the least. And I knew, and this also goes back to that other question, is progress. How do you react when you're triggered, stimulated, or activated? How do you react? Are you still responding in a trauma responsive way? Fight, flight, fight, flight, bond,
Flee.
and flee. Yes. Are we doing all of those? Or are we taking a gentle pause to see what's coming up? And so after that, I can see his nervous system rattled.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I mean, who wouldn't be? And immediately I said, wait a minute. As we're going through this whole thing of trying to figure out life again,
right,
I took a gentle pause because I had to ground myself, and I said, let's grab a mat. The mat was really meant for me because I had traveled without it, but I used my blanket for myself and gave him the mat, and I said, we have to come down and get on this mat to breathe. You are disconnected from your body right now.
Yeah.
And so we need to bring it back. And so each moment we went into meditation each day. And here we are, just a month after her transition, or a month and a half after her transition. He sends me a text message of him on the mat. And that is progress.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to Swadhyaya, self-observing. How do I react? And what practices must I shift? Come back to me, to go inward, to listen, and gain an inward standing.
That's beautiful. Wow. And so like that one, just invitation, created, like making it a priority for yourself, demonstrating that and inviting him to the mat. He now uses it. He sees the value. He immediately could see the shift. Well, I'm assuming that if he continued to do it, that he felt the shift from disembodied, not like maybe numb, maybe freezing, maybe in the middle of those responses, and your guidance to ground into the body, how profoundly impactful it could have been in that moment, and it made an impression a lasting one.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
to add to that really quickly.
Yeah, please.
Because in the middle of that, we had to get him to his doctor's appointment for high blood pressure and diabetes and
Oh
things
gosh.
that he was working through. And so he had his second doctor's appointment, and they said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because your levels have shifted.
Okay. So he got also like numbers
Yeah.
reinforced.
Yes.
Like the right brain, like
Yes.
logical numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, to validate what
Yes.
you, oh, wow, that's very timely. Oh, wow, that is a fantastic story. And I really do honor you and appreciate you for sharing something that is so near and dear to you, so personal. And I do hope that, our listeners can feel that. I am emotional just listening to it. And yeah, I feel the impact. That's really powerful. And like you said, progress. The numbers showed it. The numbers showed it.
Show it. The reduction of the fat in the liver, the reduction in the numbers with his cardiovascular system. Yeah, just seeing those numbers just shift was incredible.
Yeah, and I've noticed, because I do follow you on Instagram, that's my favorite place to see you.
Yeah.
You share a lot about you share a lot of vulnerability of, your practice, your personal practice, and in that space. And I really enjoy that personally. But you also share in some of your podcasts about different case studies you do. Do you want to share a little bit more about, or speak to our listeners about some of the other medical conditions or other ways that this practice can improve health and mental health, but physically and mentally?
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to share that as above, so below. And, unfortunately that, kind of going back, so my mother transitioned from pulmonary embolism. And so, where is the mind? What are you consuming? Because again, yoga is about bringing the mind and body back into unison. So if we're struggling, because what's inward is going to express itself outward. So maybe my outwardly, challenge is thyroid dysfunction. Maybe my outward challenge is, food addiction. And so it's manifested into diabetes. It's manifested, into, self-infliction, all of these things. And so there's different approaches, maybe we're looking at the kleshas, looking at the sufferings of the mind, and what thought or belief that are attached to that's creating that physical manifestation. And so we, look to not heal it, make it go away, but how can I reduce?
Okay.
Right? How can I reduce your experience of fibromyalgia pain? Right? So maybe it's gentle massage, right? Maybe it's longer holds in that asana or hatha series. Those different styles of yoga may offer some soothing to the ligaments, the bones, the muscles, the surrounding, nerve endings. Because I know fibromyalgia is a lot deeper than just the muscles, right? So how can I speak to those areas that can just reduce some of the sufferings, and who knows what that can manifest in, when you go into your next doctor's visit.
Okay. So, what if someone wanted to work with you one-on-one, for whatever reason, maybe it has to do with addiction, maybe it has to do with childhood trauma that maybe they're experiencing a reoccurrence in their relationships or something like that. What would it look like to engage in your services, basically? If I found you on Instagram and I was like, okay, I want to work with her. How do I work with Tanya? What do we do?
Yes, of course. Well, first and foremost, you can always send an email at aznomoretrauma@gmail.com. So I have gotten individuals who just send me whether it's a direct message, email. Of course, you can always reach me there. You can also go to my website at nomoretraumayoga.com. So those are the main ways to reach me. We go through the intake process. So I provide an intake form just to, gather some information as to the reason why you may be seeking yoga or yoga therapy. We identify what you need, right? Is it just to get more flexible? Invite in some flexibility, or just have, a nice soothing practice after a long day of work, then okay, maybe that's just a nice little one-on-one yoga class, personalized, tailored to the student, right? And then if it's a client who's just wanting to say, I'm really navigating some heavy things, and I hear something about yoga therapy, I want to see if I can work with you. So of course, again, going to the website or just sending me an email or direct message. And again, we go into that intake form, and just to see what are the goals, maybe it's just, again, to reduce some suffering, to get better sleep at night, right? To, feel less anxious, or to, have a better relationship with food in the body. So that's really that step. We get to determine if I'm a good fit, if the client feels like they feel comfortable with me, then we go ahead and move into that practice of yoga therapy. So I offer both that and somatic experiencing. So if it's not necessarily yoga therapy that you want to do, but you're still working with some lingering trauma, then we can also do somatic work as well.
Can you tell me what that is? What does it mean when you say somatic?
So somatic experiencing is really delegated more so to the nervous system. We're working with the limbic brain and the nervous system to, again, because usually what happens, there's a disconnect of the brain and the nervous system, right? So there is, different breath work. It's another therapeutic intervention to help with, doing breath work or EFT, so emotional freedom tapping. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's different exercises to really get to the sensations again of into and through the body to kind of release anything that may be still lingering, right? So a really good what is that, it's right on the tip of my, what is it, Divine Levine. So the book, oh goodness, it's getting away from me, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. The Body Keeps Score. So that's
the Body Keeps Score.
Yeah,
I've heard that title before.
So that's a great book to kind of help understand as to what type of work will be used in a session like that. So yeah, I have 2 clients that I'm working with right now in that space of somatic experiencing.
Okay.
So it's kind of replaying that trauma, going through that trauma to understand it, but also not sitting with that space of guilt and shame, or maybe that you are deserving to have had those unhealthy things happen to you.
Wow. Yeah, I did see on your website that you offer quite a bit. You have quite a few tools to bring to the table, including Ayurveda, breath work.
Yeah.
You mentioned the somatic experience. I think there was a few other things on there. You do Thai massage, which I love.
Yeah.
And I would love just to come out and hang out in Puerto Rico and have a little healing retreat with you for sure.
Yeah.
So just a few more things that I wanted to touch on. What along with all of those tools, how do I want to frame this? What advice, or how do you, before I get to that, how do you manage your own energy through this? Like, have you come up with any challenges? Like, from a massage perspective, I've had
best massages, by the way.
Oh,
the best.
Thank you.
My goodness, I could feel things were being removed, and I was like, oh, thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's when you're a good client, that is absolutely possible. But do you ever have any challenges in your practice? Like, how do you, like, that test you? And how do you move through those?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think one of the biggest challenges is to know that it's not going to look the same each time.
So non-attachment?
Again, yeah, that is, you know, and another yoga teacher may say something different, but I know for me,
I'm talking to Tanya.
I'm protective. I am protective of work. I'm protective of my client, my student. You know, I'm a nurturing mother, and you know, I'm very protective of the practice. And sometimes I have to, you know, I've had students who, for example, I had a student, she was very active. I would like to say she was very rajastic. So there are 3 gunas, and rajastic, it's the quality, right? In what way do you show up? And so her energy, her quality, it was very rajastic. It was very active, very go, 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 go. She was also a breast cancer survivor. So I think it was this, you know, she just felt very reclaimed and affirmed, and, you know, was ready to hit the mat running. But I taught a yin flow. And for her, I remember when we got up from the mat, she goes, that was very slow, and I just want to go to sleep. And so, you know, I had to let myself not be attached to that feedback, and trust that there was something in there that she could possibly use and come back to. You know, maybe it was the mantra, maybe it was, you know, the ability to just slow down.
Right?
She got there before I did. I was like, wait a minute, I get here 2 hours early, so what are you doing?
Wow. Okay. So, but trusting that what you have to offer is going to land in some form or another.
Yeah.
and not being attached to the outcome.
Yes.
And that helps you navigate through challenging, like you said, feedback.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's not going to look the same way for everyone. Like, it's
mhm.
not going to land
Sure.
for everyone. Someone could say, yeah, yep, nope, that wasn't for me. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. You learned something. You tried something new and you learned that that
Yes.
wasn't for you. Maybe that was the lesson.
Yeah. And that can be progress also,
Hmm.
process of elimination, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. And how do you, other than like practicing non-attachment and trusting, how do you kind of like rejuvenate and clear your field
Mm,
when you've had like
yeah.
a long, stressful day, or
Hmm.
maybe when you get activated?
Yeah. Yeah. This is, yeah, I like that you say that. I have to have my own toolbox. I'm actually going to be doing a reel on this shortly. Is having your own toolbox. And for me, that looks like one therapy because to me, it's just like a car. You gotta, change the tires. You gotta, your car gets you where you need to go, but you gotta change the tires, do the oil change the muffler, the windshield wipers, and all those maintenance. And so for me, that maintenance is therapy for myself.
Mm.
Um, and then, you know, if we're just speaking of a daily is a ritual,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and a bedtime ritual, which it's kind of changed a little bit, but whether it's a nice warm bath with some salts and the balloons on the side of the tub, and you just get to admire those. Flower therapy is really big to me. So meditating on the flowers, noticing the stem, noticing it in the way that it opens up, the aroma, the vibrant colors. Um, so admiring those. Um, Weighted blankets are another big one,
Ooh.
another.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I'm stimulated or activated, that's happened to me just a few nights ago. I think I saw something online or something just brought a thought for me, and it kind of stirred me up inside. And, I just used that weighted blanket just to put it on my body. Um, and so feeling that heaviness melt, made me feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
So warmth for me is really grounding. And so that weighted blanket was nice. So yeah.
So I hear that you exercise. Part of the tools that you use is like exercising your senses and like really like zeroing in on them. I
Yeah.
love your flower therapy.
Yeah.
I love following you
Yeah.
online. We've
Yeah.
got the same kind of tool genre.
Yeah. I love
Um,
that.
yeah, and I do see like a lot of presence to well, at least as much as I can through Instagram, because it's,
Mm.
still just a portion of your life, just a
Yeah.
little peek, a little window.
Mm.
But I love the beauty that you share. And I can see that you put a high value on like the simple, beautiful things in each
Mm.
day. Ah, wow. Um, so I one of the things I wanted to ask you about was how you see the future of this practice unfolding. Um, and what advice would you give to someone who is considering getting into this field?
Mhm.
Now
Sure.
that you have a really established practice, and I know that you are continuing to be a student and furthering your education and doing your case studies for more certification. Um, so yeah, what would you advise, and how do you see this field growing in the future?
Yeah, how do I see it growing? Um, I see more teachers and um, I listen to my teacher and mentor, of yoga therapy, who expressed to us that IYT, um, so International Yoga Therapy Teacher Training, moving us into licensure, where it would require obtaining a license, because we're working in hospitals, rehabilitation centers, geriatric care, rehabilitation, all of those things. And so moving into that, I think that's beautiful and great. Very happy about that, to hear that. So not sure when exactly it'll be taking place, but I know that that'll be happening.
Does that mean like background checks and things like that, where like there's like licensing requirements with a little bit more,
so I'm not entirely sure as what will all be necessary for that license. I'm still learning myself, so I don't want to speak to it incorrectly.
Sure.
So I'm awaiting to hear what that will look like. Probably going through Yoga Alliance, something of that. Not entirely sure, but I just see it evolving and growing in different ways. I mean, there's certain, I have to laugh because I'm such a person of foundation and the original of what yoga is, and just seeing how it's, evolved into beer yoga and goat yoga and just all these things. We meet people where they are, and if that's what's needed, sure. Okay. So I think I think it will change. It's already changed by offering it online. And I think the newest thing now, my take, is offering that somatic piece. I'm seeing now where they're offering, they're introducing it as somatic yoga. And maybe it'll continue to, I'm sure that teachers before me are probably just shaking their head like, what has happened?
I feel like things like this go in like the pendulum always swings. We go from and this is why like long-term cycles of our history as a culture, humans first as humanity, and then cross-culturally, how different trends from different cultures land, in the Western worlds where we are, stationed. You on a beautiful island. But it's interesting to me how we see trends evolve and then shift, going the other direction back to like the basics, to the core. Would you say that that there's something in it for everyone when it comes to yoga?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So something really true and pure that we can always come back to, no matter how many goats are on the mat.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it's because yoga, the biggest misconception is that yoga is a religion, or that yoga is, it belongs to one demographic or one body type. And so that is not true. And so that can invite in everyone, right? Because yoga is prana. The yoga posture is just a 5% of it, just a small piece of it. Because the real work is what you do when you leave the mat and you go out in the world. Can you be nonviolent? Can you not steal others' time? Can you self-observe, right? Can you act with integrity and kindness? So, it's for everyone. It's about the breath. It's about the breath. Because when an infant enters this world, what I find so fascinating, when an infant enters the world and when a person transitions, there is one question that's asked. What is the quality of the breath?
Yes. What is the quality of the breath? And tell me,
is the baby breathing? And then
is
when
it
did
strong?
they take the last breath?
When's the first and when's the last? It's noted. What is the quality of the breath?
And so for that, if that is what we're asking, then that means it's for everyone.
Ooh, I love that. That's beautiful. Yes, thank you for saying that. Thank you for bringing that piece in. I got chills. I got chills. Tanya, wow, this has been such a fantastic conversation, and I want to just ask you a few more things.
Sure.
Like, for people who are still on the fence or just want to learn more, just want some resources, what would you recommend? And then I'd also like to just kind of answer my own question for the folks listening. Tanya is all over the internet. She's got everything there, and it's free resources. First on YouTube, she has a YouTube channel, No More Trauma, where she does Pilates, and she does the yoga poses, as well as sharing other tidbits. And then az.nomoretrauma on Instagram. Again, she shares a lot there as well. My personal favorite. And then the website, where I know you have some ways to connect, and again, those reviews, which there are a lot. But what are some other, like, maybe books or other resources for someone who's investigating this, either for themselves as to engage in a practice, or if they're needing a little bit more information on deciding whether or not they want to be a practitioner or facilitator? Where would they start?
I am a person of the foundation. And I always say, go back to the yamas and niyamas. So yamas and niyamas, I believe that's by Deborah Adele.
Deborah Adele. Okay.
That is the foundation, of just, how can I have purposeful living? So the yamas and niyamas, and then you have the 8 limbs of Patanjali. I always say it incorrectly, but the 8 limbs, yamas and niyamas. Those are the foundation of yoga. So if you're a person of philosophy, this kind of goes off a little bit, quite a bit, but he is one who practices yoga. I think anyone who's into the philosophy, Michael Singer.
Okay.
Michael Singer, Untethered Soul. I think those will speak really deeply into places. And then I call it my Bible. And I learned so much about myself. Gary Zukov, The Heart of the Soul.
The Heart of the Soul. Okay.
By Gary Zukov. Those to me, those are really rich, and puts you in awe. You can really sit with self. And maybe one more, Anger, by Thich Nhat Hanh. These are just some rich. To me, I think it's like they're rich. just rich pieces in the book that'll really just have you say, oh, I see now.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, is there anything else in closing that you would like to share? Anything else that maybe I hadn't asked or covered? Anything that you'd like to leave us with?
I think the perfect closing, I think, is always, as above, so below. As above, so below. So we're in, and I say that only because we're in so much of, as a collective, a reclaiming of our space, our time, our body, our mind. And if we just take a moment to just sit, just pause, and just listen to the breath. Maybe just observe and to see if it's hollow, if it's bumpy, if it's long. Maybe a deep sigh. The breath will always be the answer. And what you're experiencing, it'll always give you the answer to what you need. Maybe a warm bath, maybe a cup of tea, maybe a simple gaze into the eyes of a loved one, or maybe just a nice walk down the sidewalk with your furry friend. The breath will let you know.
So for our listeners, she just gave you a piece. If you were like really paying attention and you listened all the way through, that beautiful, purposeful tone and like that pause that you put just in, like it makes you kind of like you said, lean in, like, ooh. And like the way that you talk about breath, I just immediately you throw me into like my autonomic system turns to parasympathetic, where I'm like, I'm just speaking with you, my eyes are watery, and I find myself taking more breaths and smiling more. I'm getting all kinds of chemical, juiciness happening through this interview. And anytime we have a discussion, which I'm really, really honored and feel privileged to have been able to have you in my life and to be able to tap into the richness of your experience and all that you've accomplished up to this point. And I really think that this is just a little beginning. I know that you offer so much online, so much free content. So I know that folks that find you are for you, and you've given us a lot to think about, a lot of answers about what trauma-informed yoga is, and introducing us to this new practice, and in a very timely way, and like you said, in a period in the collective consciousness where we really are. I think we're ready for it. I think we're ready for it. So, wow. With that, Tanya, I just want to make sure, I'm going to say it one more time for our listeners, and it will be linked below on all the platforms that this interview is going to be posted. But it is Tanya, our Puerto Ricano, our Bahamian mama.
Yeah, Bahama Rican.
Bahama Rican. You can find her at nomoretraumayoga.com. And that's so you can get a hold of her and find out different ways to work with her. On YouTube, free content at No More Trauma, and on Instagram at az.nomoretrauma.
Yeah.
Tanya, thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your smile, and your sense of humor, and that voice. I would love to have you on again, because I know like there is a whole science and little like there's more. I know you're studying more, and I want to talk to you when you're another time to talk more about trauma specifically, you know? Yeah. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and leave it here. And thank you, listeners, for hanging out with us today and for your presence and your time. This is Michelle and Tanya. You're listening to Between Heaven and Earth Healing Arts podcast. And blessings abound always now. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.
Awesome.